In this video, I'm going to walk through the pricing requirements for lots 1A and 1B of the G-Cloud 15 framework. Now, if you've looked at the pricing of all the other lots, you'll notice that 1A and 1B are a bit more complex, so I'm going to break it down in this video. Now, before I start, I want to mention something really important, and this is to be sure you complete all parts of the pricing for each lot you apply for, because if anything is missing, even in just one lot, your entire application becomes non-compliant. Okay, so now I've highlighted that, let's crack on. So for lots 1A and 1B, the pricing only makes up 10% of your total score, but its role is much bigger than enabling the evaluators just to score you. It also helps them run a framework that works properly under the new Procurement Act, especially when it comes down to how buyers actually award the contracts. Buyers want flexibility, and they want choice, and they want enough pricing information to confidently pick the buying route that suits them best. And that means your pricing information needs to support both routes under the Procurement Act. So to make sense of what they call the pricing mechanism or the questions, let's quickly go over those two routes so the rest makes sense. When it comes to awarding contracts under the Procurement Act, buyers have two options. They can run a competition or award without competition, which is basically the new name for what was called direct award. If they decide to run a competition, they aren't looking for detailed pricing upfront on the framework. Instead, they'll create their own requirement when it's needed. They'll invite the relevant suppliers to bid, and then they'll judge the prices that come back in on those bids. And those prices will be tailored to their exact needs and their specific situation. So in this route, the real pricing happens later when suppliers respond to the competition. And that's why CCS doesn't lock you into providing every tiny price point during the framework stage, because they just simply don't need that level of detail at that point. The other route, award without competition, works very differently. So if a buyer wants to award without competition, they can't ask you for a custom quote. They have to rely completely on the pricing information that you provided when you submitted your framework application. So everything they need to understand about your pricing has to be there already. So CCS gathers all the pricing information during the framework process, so buyers can be confident that what they see is reliable enough to award a contract directly. And that's why this pricing section matters so much. For some buyers, the information you provide here is the only thing they'll be able to use when deciding whether they can award you a contract without running a competition. Pricing mechanism. So to help with this, they use what they call their mechanism for establishing price. It sounds worse than it is. It's basically them saying, you provide the numbers and we'll do the maths. Boom. And here's the formula. Total price equals baseline pricing less framework discount plus onboarding price plus cost increasing factors less cost decreasing factors. So let's break this down and take a look at what each one is. Total price. This is the price a buyer will look at if they want to award without competition. You don't manually enter it. The system generates it for you using the other details that you provide. And because some parts of the mechanism can change over time, we'll cover that a little bit later, your total price can also change for future buyers. Baseline pricing. Now this is just your usual price list, your catalogue, your rate card, your here's what this thing costs page on your website, and it can be provided as a link or a PDF. Now this one is variable, which means it can be updated later, which is really handy if your catalogue evolves. Framework discount. Now this is the discount you'll offer to every G-Cloud buyer. You just need to enter one discount percentage that applies to all of your services in that lot. It has to be between 0 and 100, and yes, 0 is absolutely allowed. And the highest discount gets the full 5% marks. Then everyone else is scored proportionally against that highest score. Now this number stays fixed until the framework reopens, so pick something that you can be sure you can live with long term. And remember, this is the discount you'll offer to every G-Cloud buyer. Anything conditional like NHS only discounts or long-term commitment deals, well, that's going to be covered in another part. Fixed onboarding. This is the one-off cost to get a buyer set up. Think configuration, migration, account setup. You need to answer 9 onboarding scenario questions. Then, to calculate your score, CCS will add those 9 prices together. They'll calculate the average from it, and then they will compare everyone's averages. The lowest average gets the full 5% of the marks. and everyone else is scored based on how close they are to that lowest price. So if the lowest average is 100, that person gets 5%. Then if yours is 200, you'd get 2.5%. CCS use a formula to calculate all this, but the idea is pretty much if your price is double the lowest, you get half of the 5%. If your price is triple the lowest, you get a third of the 5%. So the more expensive you are compared to the cheapest bid, the less of that 5% you get. And then you just have to pick the taxonomy area your prices relate to. And be aware, this section is fixed until the framework reopens, so you need to take some time to get it right. Additional sources of cost. Now, this is the cost increase in factors. All this question really wants is a heads up on anything that might push that price up. Things like usage spikes, changes in energy prices, or exchange rates. Basically, it's your chance to flag up anything that isn't covered elsewhere, but could still affect what the buyer ends up paying. Additional sources of cost reduction. Now, this is where you can talk about those cost decreasing factors, which are the extra pricing options you offer, such as the NHS or sector-specific deals, volume discounts, commitment-based pricing, currency options, time-limited promotions. This section can be updated anytime, and you don't need loads of detail either. Just a clear summary is enough. So that's the 4 sections. The fixed elements, that's the onboarding and the framework discount, give buyers confidence. And then the variable parts, that's the baseline pricing and the supplier-specific schemes, well, they give you, the supplier, the flexibility. Price certainty. Then you have the price certainty section. So buyers want to know that the price they're looking at is fair, clear, and isn't going to suddenly jump up for no reason. So they have a price certainty question that asks you to explain in 200 words or less how your pricing allows accurate budgeting for multi-year contracts in accordance with the principles outlined in the inflation and indexation section of the sourcing playbook. So what does this mean, and can it be covered in 200 words? So let's take a look. Inflation and indexation. When buyers are planning multi-year contracts, they don't just want to know about the price today. They want to know how that price might change in the future. And that's where inflation and indexation come in. So in simple terms, inflation is when things get more expensive over time. We're all familiar with that one. And indexation is a fair and predictable way of adjusting your prices when that happens. To keep things transparent, CCS prefers price changes to be linked to well-known public indexes, like the Consumer Prices Index, or CPI, and this is the one that shows you how much everyday living costs are rising. And then there's the Services Producer Price Index, or SPPI, and this one tracks how much it costs businesses to deliver services. That's things like staff, software, support, and so on. So in this section, you could say something like, our prices may increase once a year in line with CPI capped at 3%. And that's genuinely all CCS want, just a simple, fair rule that buyers can plan around. Now, the sourcing playbook they mention, think of it like the government's How to Buy Things Properly handbook. You definitely don't need to know the whole thing, just the parts about fairness, transparency, and dealing with inflation sensibly, which is the inflation and indexation section they mention on page 27. Now, once you've done all that, pop back to your G-Cloud dashboard and make sure your pricing section is marked as complete, and then it's done. And that's your full walkthrough of the pricing submission for Lot 1A and Lot 1B. It is a chunky section, but once you understand how CCS has structured it and why, it does become a lot easier to complete. If I can help you with your G-Cloud submission or any other tender submission, head over to thetendercoach.com, set up a call, and let's see how I can help you and your business.